The story begins with a young man called Suho texting with his mother. Suho, just like anyone of his age, likes to hang out with his friends, but today he won't be able to because he has to attend a birthday party against his will. Mistakenly, he bumps into someone and gets scolded by a complete stranger. Suho apologizes, but inside he feels disgusted for facing humiliation. Suho tries to shift his mind to the current problem, but suddenly a lightning strike strikes down the city and pierces through it, causing mass destruction and chaos everywhere. But it was just the first, and then the whole sky got filled with lightning, ready to destroy the whole city, and in a matter of seconds, it happened. Suho doesn't realize what's happening. All he can see at the moment is people dying everywhere. He tries to save himself by running as fast as he can, but suddenly he sees a truck a moment away from taking his life. To his surprise, Suho wakes up, but he himself doesn't know where he is because all he sees is the night sky, 2 moons, and some creatures he has never witnessed in his entire life. He finds himself naked in a completely different world. He doesn't know how he got here or who brought him. There are many questions but no answer. But before his mind could understand the situation, a bear was ready to take his life, but Suho once again survives through a miracle. This time, it was the wolves who brutally hunted the bear, which is something Suho has never seen in his life. It's all a reality, but he can't believe his eyes. It's too much to be true. In comparison, none of it really matters because all that matters is survival. So Suho runs as fast as his body can go. He doesn't know where he will end up, but he knows he has to run. Out of nowhere, he hears a voice that tells him that his constitution has increased by 1. The voices catch him off guard, which makes him fall to the ground. Suho tries to pick himself up, and his body feels hunger. He finds himself surrounded by fruits, but he has doubts about their edibility. After all, it's not his world, so he can't be sure about anything. He tries to resist, but then he takes a bite out of it. Before he could eat it, he heard a sound. It's a wild forest, so every sound is no less than a warning for him. Behind the grass is someone who is ready to take Suho's life, and before he could move an inch, a giant snake made the first move. The snake's jaw is ready to take the life of Suho, but due to the turns of events, the predator becomes the prey of someone who is above him in the food chain. In the last few minutes, Suho almost lost his life twice in this mysterious place, and he isn't sure how long he will actually survive here. After all, miracles can't happen every time. He has to gain skills and knowledge to survive, because every day at this place is a competition, and only the worthy will survive. 66 days pass by, and Suho is still alive, barely surviving because a pack of wolves is behind him all the time. He believes they will never stop chasing him until he's alive. He knows this is how his life is now, so the only smart decision is to develop himself continuously. 1 year has passed, and Suho has upgraded himself very much since the first day. Now he can lift heavy things, which helps him get the food. Suho acquires a banana, and this will be his food for the day, but wolves still haven't left him alone, especially a white one who just can't take his eyes off him. He eats the banana, but suddenly he feels something, and when he turns his eyes, he sees a gorilla marching towards him. Now it's a battle of death, but Suho has gained experience in the last year, so he won't need a miracle this time to survive and save himself. The gorilla falls from the tree due to its enormous size. After falling down, gorilla realizes that it almost killed a wolf, who is now seeking revenge on it. Just like any predator of the wild, gorilla doesn't like that a weaker animal is standing up. The gorilla screams to scare the wolf off, but the wolf is in the mood to run away. The gorilla attacks the wolf, but it wasn't enough to take its life, so it has to strike again. But before that, Suho interferes and stabs the gorilla's eye, making it go more insane than before. The wolf runs away, but Suho can't. Now he has to face a gorilla more angry than ever, ready to take his life. But before that, Suho wakes back up in the real world, surrounded by the doctors. He is telling them his story and trying to explain his wild experiences. Even though doctors don't really believe his story of 2 moons and giant creatures, something about the story sparks their interest. The doctor asks him why he tried to pick up a fight with gorilla if he already knew he couldn't stand it. But Suho tells them the nature of fighting, why one can't become stronger or more powerful without defeating someone more powerful, and why no matter where you go, there's always a ruler. On the other side, gorilla is completely ready to kill Suho, but to his surprise, the white wolf attacks the gorilla to save him. He refuses to believe what he saw, that the same animal who wanted to kill him since last year is now saving him, ready to sacrifice his own life in the process. Instantly, the whole group attacks the gorilla, and Suho gets shocked because the same wolves who wanted to kill him are now saving him. He falls unconscious, but the wolves don't attack because the pup he saved was the son of the king. The wolf honors his gesture. The year passes, and those who were enemies become friends. Suho joined the group of wolves, and they accepted him like he was one of them. Suho doesn't feel alone anymore, even though they were animals and yet the first to accept him in this world. We move to the 31st year of Suho, and now he's completely different from what he used to be. A scared, weak boy has turned into a fierce warrior who isn't afraid of taking down large snakes. He is also ready to do everything for his family, the wolves. Together with them, he hunts down a boar, which wasn't a big task for them. Years go by, but Suho fails to find another human like him in this strange world. He made many new companions in the form of wolves and lost many too. At the beginning, he thought he wouldn't be able to survive a day in this wild place, but now he's still standing, stronger than ever, even after hundreds of years. The doctor finds his story the most interesting he has ever heard because no human can live for 500 years and become king of the wolves. The doctors then ask him the most important question, how he returned. Suho then narrates the story of how he started a war on gorillas over Moonlight Hill. The wolves, led by Suho, were ready to claim the biggest victory of their lives. The battle began, and everyone started to brutally kill each other. Suho knew who his target was, and it was the king gorilla. He knew if he killed it, it would be over instantly, so he went straight for its life. Just before the mere second Suho could claim the victory, something strange happened, and he left the world without a trace. On Earth, we see some guys roaming in the abandoned and destroyed city looking for something. Suddenly, their device tells them that something is happening, which might be the thing they want to see. Everyone starts to run away because the portal is opening. A girl with a sword in her hand gets ready to take on anyone who comes out of the portal. The portal opens, and it's none other than the Suho. The enormous energy surrounding him shows that a portal has opened, and in a matter of seconds, it closes itself again. What's left is Suho lying naked on the ground. Everyone doesn't think it's unusual, as they call him another returner. And the next time Suho opened his eyes, he was in a hospital with a doctor who recorded his testimony for the Awaken Bureau. He tells Suho that he is fine and will be discharged in a few days. The doctor then proceeds to leave, but Suho stops him, and when the doctor asks him what's the matter, he replies with a smile and says thanks to him because he was the first human he talked to in thousands of years. The doctor smiles back, saying his information will be very helpful. On the other hand, at the Awaken Bureau headquarters, we see the same girl who almost killed Suho with her boss. They talk about a rare F-rank patient who is none other than Suho. The boss explains that if he were an E-rank patient, the government would have provided him benefits. The girl wonders how a F managed to go through a portal. The chief explains it could be pure luck for him. He then shows the report of the doctors who talked to Suho. The report clearly mentions that Suho behaves like a wolf and is suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder, which is common among first responders. The girl decides to deliver this report in person because she wants to confirm something about him. At the hospital, Suho is still lost in his thoughts, how he spent thousands of years in that strange world and his sudden return to the Earth. Even though he has been back for about 2 weeks now, he is still struggling to get together there. He wants to go back to that beautiful, wild world with his companions. He once again wants to experience that adventurous life filled with dangers everywhere, but at the end of the day, he liked being there. The nurse comes in and informs him that it's time for lunch. Suho too feels hungry, so he delays his deep thoughts and decides to eat. Awaken a bureau girl enters his room and finds him in a very strange position. The girl introduces herself as Choi Soo-young. Suho immediately senses and identifies her smell, and with the help of her blonde hair, he remembers that he has seen her somewhere. She then explains that she's the first person he saw when he returned from the portal. She also remembers the predatory look in his eyes when he returned. But now he's a completely different person. He doesn't seem as dangerous as before. Suho then asks her what the Awaken Bureau is. She explains that it's an organization that helps returnees like Suho readjust to society. She then asks him to sign the consent for sharing information, but Suho finds the pen more interesting than the contact itself. After all, he holds a pen after thousands of years. He even forgot what to do with it as he started to draw a wolf on it. Suong is annoyed by this behavior, even though she knows he is a student, and she can't stand his behavior. She asks him if he can learn to draw, but he explains he already knows how to draw. She expected such an answer, but then she asks him what he actually learned there. Suho explains that there was no magic or sorcery in that world. Survival was all about physical strength and intelligence. Choi feels disappointed because she believes Suho did nothing useful there for 10 years. He then tries to correct that it's not 10 years but thousands of years he spent there, but she reminds him that he went missing in 2015 and has now returned in 2025. She then hands him his Awaken ID card, which provides personal and important information about him. She also suggests he meet up with his family soon. After hearing about his family, Suho gets a new purpose for his life. He thought his family was long gone, but now that they are alive, he can finally see them. Suho also comes to the realization that even though he got his real family back, he also lost his forest family, with whom he spent thousands of years, and now probably he will see them again. He checks the report and sees that both his dad and mother died on that day, which only leaves his brother Junho alive. He immediately jumps out of bed and rushes to meet the doctor. Suho then asks the doctor for a favor, to which the doctor replies, "What help can I give?" He then tells the doctor that his little brother is still alive and that he immediately needs to meet with him. The doctor then tries to calm him down because he isn't ready to get back into society after all. It's been only 2 weeks since his return. Suho was in no mood to take advice, and he replies in his ruthless voice to the doctor that he isn't asking for his permission, but ordering him to help. The doctor, too, decides not to annoy him anymore. He agrees to help, but only under one condition. Later, we see Suho in a taxi ready to leave the hospital. Dr. Baldi, as Suho calls him, warns the taxi driver about Suho's condition. Suho leaves as a doctor and his nurse watches him. She then asks the doctor the reason for his generosity. After all, the doctor paid for all his medical bills, bought him new clothes, and even hired a taxi for him. What's the reason for a filthy rag like him? The doctor tells her that Suho might be a Frankenstein, and the government doesn't give a damn about him, but his story is still far more interesting than any story he has ever heard. The doctor still wants to hear his story and knows more about his experience and adventure in that mysterious world. When they go back to the doctor's room, he asks the nurse to get the broken handle repaired. She shockingly asks him how it happened. Suho was the one who caused this. He returned to the normal world, but maybe his strength, which he acquired with thousands of years of experience, is still with him. This is important for the doctor because it could be proof of how authentic the story actually is. After all, this is only the second time the door handle has broken. On the other side, Suho is stuck in traffic, and on his car's radio, he hears news about the attack of the monsters. Monsters were rampaging through the entire city and causing mass destruction. The Defense Ministry sent the forces, and the situation is now under control. They were successful in taking down the monster, but suffered casualties. Then the radio host talks about the SBFC Championship, a tournament between the Awakers to find out who is best. World Rank 34, the Russian Bear is up against the World Rank 48, Beyond Horizon, and the winner will face the current #1 from Japan. Suho finds it interesting, but he doesn't know what this is all about. The driver seems excited about it, like it's not something unusual for him. Suho remembers how the doctor told him that the world has changed a lot, but he didn't expect something this big. The driver then shares his wish to start hunting, but he's not an awakener, so he's just stuck with his boring job. Suho asks, in confusion, what he is talking about because there are no hunting grounds in Seoul. The driver finds it dumb, but he had no idea that Suho had been absent for the last 10 years. Suho asks him to tell him everything about it, and driver, being bored, agrees. The story goes back 10 years, when a door to a different world opened, not just in Korea but in the entire world. That unfortunate day is known as the Day of the Great Disaster. That day, the Earth got connected to many different worlds, and the monsters raided the Earth. It was so disastrous that 10% of the entire human population died in a single day. Governments of every country deployed armies to counter those monsters, but against their strength, armies stand no chance. People who disappeared during the Great Disaster were later known as the Awakeners, and they were given licenses to be mercenaries. The job was to kill these monsters in exchange for money. Slowly, this turned into a full-time business, and mercenaries started to form guilds. Life without mercenaries became impossible because they were the only ones who could counter the monsters. Suho finds the concept of a mercenary very interesting. After all, he was a mighty warrior in the other world who waged wars on many races. He asks the driver how one can become a mercenary. The driver laughs it off and explains it's impossible for an ordinary human. Only Awakeners can become mercenaries, and for that, they have to pass the mercenary examination at the Awakeners Bureau. Suho carefully listens to the driver because he wants to become a mercenary, but the idea of giving an examination seems complicated to him. Last time, when he was a fighter, it wasn't his job but his way of life. Finally, the taxi driver shows him the house he was supposed to drop him off at. He drops Suho there, and now Suho can finally meet a family member after 10 years. He feels nervous before entering the building. Suddenly, an old woman notices him outside and begins to stare at him. Suho doesn't realize what's going on, so to break the silence, he asks her if she knows Junho. This question immediately enrages her, and she starts to abuse him. She releases all her frustration and tells him that no one lives here by that name. Suho couldn't say a word before the woman shut down her window. He starts to wonder if it's the wrong address. Before he could leave, he suddenly heard the voice of a kid called Gunwoo. The kid and the old woman talk about money lenders who harass them daily. Suho then checks their mailbox and sees that his brother is in debt. He slowly starts to go away and begins to wonder what true power is because the world where he spent his last 10 years was all about strength. Now that he has returned to the normal world, money triumphs over everything. Money is the true power. This makes him completely determined to become a mercenary, so he goes to the Awaken Bureau. Upon arrival, Suho's application gets rejected because he doesn't match the requirements. He objects how can this be possible because he is a freak and returned to Earth 2 weeks ago. The receptionist explains to him that most people die when the portal opens, and they just can't let anyone become a hunter. The reason Suho can't give the exam is because he is 4 Awakena points short. She suggests he join Awakena school or increase points manually, but until then he can't give the examination. The process gets more complicated for Suho to become a mercenary. On his way out, he notices a bounty poster which catches his attention. The name of the monster is written as Suwon Field's Goblins. While in the taxi, he asks the driver why there are so many walls around the city, and the driver explains that the entire Seoul City is covered by these walls and is divided into 12 areas, and there are many gates to travel through. Finally, the taxi driver drops Suho at gate 27. He isn't nervous or scared at all before entering the hunting grounds. 2 military guards stop him before he can enter and ask him what his business is here. Suho replies with just one word, hunting. The guards then asked him to show his mercenary license. Suho explains he got none, and before they could ask him to go back, suddenly an emergency happens. A car with a monster on it comes out of hunting ground and crashes outside. Every guard then in a formation begins to shoot at it and kills it. They then look around and find that Suho is not there anymore, and they believe he has run away. Suho, on the other side, starts to make preparations for everything he will need, like a car and a smartphone. He will require these things for hunting. The sun sets and the sky turns blue, which brings back many memories for Suho. He then tests his physical skills and realizes that he hasn't lost them. They are still with him after he spent thousands of years acquiring them. He's now clear of his goal to become a mercenary, and soon he discovers some monsters surrounding an alone animal. He decides that this is the perfect moment to test his skills and see if he's capable of taking the lives of monsters to protect mankind. Suho then attacks and kills them brutally, just like he used to fight against the monsters of the other world. Suddenly, a screen pops up in front of him with a message written as searching for your class. Suddenly, the many screens surrounded Suho like he was playing some sort of game. He doesn't know what's happening or what this system error is about. The monsters attack him, thinking he's distracted, but this turns out to be their worst mistake as he kills them all with very little effort. Another message pops up saying system error, transferring druid. Failed to reset stats. Suho doesn't realize what he has failed at, but suddenly he remembers that he used to hear these messages in the other world. But after a while, when he maxed out his physical abilities, he stopped leveling up. Suho never thought this system would be on Earth too, and then he obtains an achievement. Suho never obtained any achievement, and he believes this is his awakening. We can see he has a total of 7 points, and he can buy items with these points. Suho decides to use these points, and suddenly bread and water appear in front of him. Then he notices the dog he just saved, but it's dying and the puppy can't see it. He feels pity for the dog who dies in front of him and asks him to take care of the puppy. Suho then looks into the innocent eyes of the puppy, whose mother just died, so he decides to take it as his companion. Suho then sees that he killed a total of 7 monsters. Night passes and morning comes, and Suho and the puppy pay their final tribute to the female dog. At gate 27, everyone is waiting for it to open, and suddenly Suho arrives there with all the monsters he has killed. The same guards who were doubting his capability are now in shock. How can someone so casually kill them all and bring it here? Suho then goes to the counter to receive his money. He receives money for killing goblins and collecting blood crystals. He receives $2,100 in cash because he doesn't have an account yet, and the receptionist also suggests that he get registered. Suho curiously asks her about the blood crystals and learns that they were inside the goblins and can be sold for $200 each. Suho finds it profitable because now he can easily make money doing what he is best at, hunting. After that, we see a store and a man talking to the shop owner about his new job as a truck driver, and this man is none other than Suho's brother, Junho. The shop owner is happy for him because his new job will help him deal with his financial troubles. On his way back, Money confronts Junho and smashes him to the ground. They ask him where he is because they were unable to find him at his house. They beat him up because he hasn't paid the money he borrowed. Junho then hands over $2,240 to him for the month's principal amount and the interest. But the moneylender doesn't like this gesture and hits him again because, according to him, he's still short of the amount he has to pay. Junho begins to cry because he feels helpless and asks for forgiveness. He also pledges to return all the money within the given time. But they continue to beat him up until a voice stops them. They all look in the direction from which the voice came, and we see Suho in his angriest mood marching towards them. Junho identifies his brother immediately. Suho continues to walk towards them with rage in his eyes, then gets down and asks his brother if he's parked Junho to confirm. Then we see a flashback before the day of the great disaster. Even in the flashback story, it isn't different. Some people are beating up Junho in school. He's still helpless, but he suddenly sees his brother nearby, so he calls for help. Surprisingly, Suho doesn't even react, and he doesn't even look back when Junho cries for help. Perhaps he doubts his ability because this was before he became a warrior in the wild. Junho realizes how useless his brother is. On the day of the great disaster, Junho was watching TV when suddenly emergency news was broadcast about a giant explosion. He realizes his brother is not home yet, so he rushes to the door but gets stopped by his aunt and uncle. They feel a little better when they discover Junho is home. Junho tells them about his parents, but even they have no idea where they are. He then mentions that Suho isn't home yet, but suddenly a giant explosion destroys their building. When Junho picks himself up, he sees a big eye of a monster looking at him, and since that day, he hasn't cared if his brother is alive or dead. They never really had a good relationship to care about it. Now we turn back to the present, where Junho is still shocked after seeing his brother. Suho calmly jokes about how old he has become, even though he's his younger brother. Junho, still in shock, asks why he's still alive and well. But their conversation is interrupted by the money lender, who believes that both of them are mentally ill. This annoys Suho, and he can't stand someone insulting his brother anymore, so he grabs his head and smashes it to the ground. This was an example of his new strength, which Junho has never seen. The second one tries to take him on, but Suho stops his kick in midair, and within a second he snaps his leg. This was a horrific scene to witness for the third one, so he starts to beg for mercy and tells him he didn't even touch his brother. Suho then gives him all of his money, which he earned by hunting monsters. The money lender gets his money, and then they both start to go away. When they arrive at Junho's apartment, Suho again meets the same granny who rudely told him to go away, but this time her behavior is different because now she knows he's Junho's brother. They go inside, and Junho introduces his sleeping son Gunwoo to Suho. He tells him that his son is now the most important thing for him, and he will do anything for him. Suho asks where the kid's mother is, and Junho tells him that she left the family to live by herself. He blames himself for this because of his financial failures, he wasn't able to provide enough. Suho then asks him for a drink so they could both sit together and talk. After all, there are a lot of things to talk about. Junho tells him that he always thought Suho died on the disaster day, and is now returning as an awakener is perhaps the craziest thing that happened. Suho then helps him figure out how much debt he has and finds out it's $50,000. Junho also tells him not to worry about it now because he got a brand new job and now he can pay back all of his debt. Suho asks what type of job has he got, so Junho tells him that now he works at a store. Suho gets an idea, so he asks him who owns the truck he uses. Junho explains that he doesn't own that truck, but that truck belonged to landowner Granny's son, who died during the great disaster. Now she looks after his son because she believes he's her family. As they were talking, Gunwoo woke up, and to his surprise, he found a dog near him, which immediately cheered him up. He gets even happier when he sees that his dad has returned. He asks Junho about Suho and finds out he's his uncle. He greets him and politely asks him if he could play with his dog. Suho smiles back and says yes. Gunwoo gets cheered up because he always wanted a dog but they couldn't afford one. Suho then shares his idea with his brother. He tells him that he could work with him and together they will make a lot of money, but it will need Junho's truck. Junho then asks him what he is thinking about. Suho tells him about the monster hunting. The next day, Suho goes to the Awaken Bureau and surprises them by telling them that he leveled himself up in just one day. The receptionist then gives him a smartphone called the Xphone 50 and suggests he download the Awaken Bureau app for the latest updates and schedule for the mercenary exam. She also explains to him that they are having some problems with the stat screens. Suho confusingly asks her about it. Suddenly, a screen pops up telling the stats of Suho. He sees that he is still on level 1, which explains why he was feeling weak. Now that he has everything he needs, he is ready to power up and go monster hunting. Suho then calls his brother to tell him about it. Junho congratulates him for finally becoming a full-fledged mercenary and wishes him the best for the exam. He tells him he will be there after completing his job. Suho wants to waste no time, so he orders him to come immediately so they can hunt monsters for debt. Junho then reminds her that it's way too early for that because he's just a freak. Suho doesn't like excuses, so he hangs up the phone. Junho realizes his brother has completely changed. It's not the same weak Junho he used to know. Suho starts to look for the nearest hunting ground. A crowd filled with cars is ready to enter hunting grounds. Everyone is not alone. Some are with their teams because hunting monsters is no easy task. We see a team of 5 people preparing to enter the hunting ground. 3 members can be seen scared even though they are awakeners, while the 2 at the front are ready for hunting. They try to calm their teammates, and suddenly Suho shows up there. The receptionist asks him for his Awaken ID and lets him in, but also warns him not to enter dungeons. Everyone sees how Suho is walking without any weapons or equipment, like he doesn't even care about monsters. The police guards talk about Suho's accomplishments, like how he killed 7 goblins at gate 27. The group we met earlier finds Suho interesting, so they decide to chase him, but when they enter the hunting grounds, they lose sight of him. Suho begins to test his abilities by running sprints. He wants to check how far he can push himself in a fight. Suddenly, he hears multiple voices, and when he looks, he sees 2 groups of people sword fighting each other and cutting each other's limbs brutally. Suho sees that there are too many in number and it will take a lot of time to kill them, so he decides not to pursue them and instead look for someone with a higher bounty. Luckily, a guy arrives there with a $40,000 bounty. The name is Choi Gushik. Suho was about to leave, but hearing 40,000 stopped him. He wonders how powerful one has to be for a 40,000 bounty on his head. Those who were sword fighting start to run away seeing Choi because he's a C ranker. Choi then challenges all 3, who were fighting for his time for a matchup. But they know they can't stand a chance against the Choi. They begin to negotiate and offer everything if he lets them go, but Choi refuses their offer because he finds it boring to let anyone go. Just 1 second before Choi could crush them, Suho came in between. Everyone gets shocked because this idiot came out of nowhere and is now standing in front of Choi fearless with not a single sign of worry on his face. Choi asks him who he is and why he came here. Suho ignores his question and in return asks him if he's the guy with the 40,000 bounty. Choi angrily again asks who he is, and Suho replies, someone who is in need of money. Everyone starts to worry about him because no one tries to fight a C ranker for such reasons, and Suho seems just a kid to them. Choi tells him that this is the worst decision he has ever made and that it would have been better for him if he had just stayed away. Suho doesn't even flinch, but suddenly he feels his body freeze and he can't move himself. Choi explains to him that he made a mistake by looking into his eyes for more than 5 seconds, and he can use his powers on him. He then orders his men to crush every single bone in Suho's body, but before that, Suho punches him. Everyone, including Choi, can't understand how he did it because no one can free himself from Choi's power. When Choi looks at Suho's face, he sees something that scares him to his core. He sees Suho's most sinister and evil look, a look of someone who is ready to brutally murder him, and he realizes his biggest mistake ever will now cost him his life. Suho almost hits him, but at the last second, Choi uses his ability and binds Suho. He feels a little better and believes the threat is over. He tells Suho that he knows he is strong, but he can't defeat him. Choi takes his knife to stab him, but once again Suho frees himself and kicks him far away. He tells Choi of his incompetence to have anything besides his bind ability, which is useless against Suho. The other 3 find it miraculous that someone has defeated Choi so easily. Suho then gets surrounded by Choi's men. Their swords are red with the blood of people they have killed. Suho asks them if they want to fight too. Choi's men find it's their chance to save their lives because it's impossible for them to take him down. They all then beg for mercy and tell him that they have no bounty on their heads. Choi forced them to work for him using his muscle power, and now they can just run away. Suho asks for a rope to tie Choi, and one of those 3 guys gives it to him. Choi angrily calls his men traitors for betraying him. They reveal that they always hated him, and now it's their chance to get freedom. Choi realizes he can't do it all by himself, so he tries to persuade Suho. He tells him that if he lets him go, he will do everything in his power to make Suho king of the city. He believes Suho will agree to his terms, but in return, Suho kicks him so badly he falls unconscious. Now Suho once again asks Choi's men for their bounty, and they still tell him that they are useless and that killing them will do no good. But the 3 hunters reveal to Suho that every single one of Choi's men is a criminal and has a bounty on their heads. Suho then decides to hunt them too for some extra cash. Later, the 3 hunters help Suho with their car and thank him. Suho reveals he wasn't there to help them at all. He then asks them what their special power is. The leader reveals he became a sword fighter after awakening and learned some other skills via book. Suho gets surprised that you can learn skills from books, so he decides that he will learn extra things from them. They find it weird that Suho is so strong yet he doesn't know about the skill books. Out of curiosity, he asks Suho what his level is, and when he reveals that he's just a F ranker, everyone gets shocked because how can a mere rookie F ranker hunt down a C ranker? Suho then asks them about the portal, and they reveal it's a level 1 dungeon, and only high profile and strong mercenaries are allowed to visit it. They wanted to go there, but their strength wasn't enough for that. Suho then asks them about the favor they wanted to ask because he's ready to help them. Then we see Captain Kang and his team coming out of a portal, feeling frustrated. His team is badly injured, and this makes him angry because he doesn't want to work with amateurs and crybabies. He shouts at them to stop being such crying babies. He then promises to get them fired because the Awaken Bureau doesn't need idiots who can't even protect themselves. His partner then calms him down and reminds him how the current system works. Rich and privileged parents use their influence to make their kids hunters. They hire professional mercenaries to kill monsters on behalf of their kids and train them. While the kid becomes a mercenary with the help of his parents' money, he still gains no good skills and remains a burden on his teammates. Captain finds it unfair that even in this profession, rich people can bypass effort and time quickly while normal people have to face consequences. Captain Kang then asks the guards there if something happened today, and he finds out someone delivered 10 Ravagers, including a C-rank boss named Choi. Kang gets shocked that a C-ranker has been defeated, so he asks which high-ranking mercenary did it. The guards then reveal that it wasn't a high-ranking person who did all of this but just a noob. F-ranker, that fighter was so strong that he fractured multiple ribs of Choi, which is pretty difficult because of Choi's ability. Kang then immediately remembers Suho and believes he's the one who caused all of this. He instantly asks the guard where this F-ranker went. The guards tell him the last time they saw him was when he entered the portal. It was enough information for him, so then Captain Kang runs to enter the portal because he wants to witness Suho's strength with his own eyes. Captain Kang then asks the operator which door the Suho used to enter the portal. On the other side, Suho has already entered the portal with new clothes, and he likes them. He finds out that normal clothes can't enter portals due to dimensional energy, but these special clothes can. They are expensive but do the job. Suho then notices something different, so he asks what that thing is. His partner explains that it's the door. Doors are the pathways that let hunters enter 38 different dungeons, and the door they just used was number 24. Suddenly the door gets disappeared, and Suho asks what happened. He finds out that the door won't show up again until they clear the dungeon. Suho then asks him what clearing dungeons means. Does it mean killing every single monster because it will take a lot of time, and Suho is the last guy who wants to spend so much time in it. His partner explains to him that they just have to kill the strongest one to open the door. This energizes Suho because he has developed an urge to hunt down the strongest. He then immediately goes straight to find the strongest monster because he's excited to kill it. His partner, on the other hand, realizes something is not right because Suho has no tracking skills, so what if he gets lost? If that happens, they will both be wiped out with the dimension. He knows this is a serious issue, so he begins to search for him. We then see monsters of the dimension. They are big and fierce, looking for something to kill. Suddenly they hear a voice, and before one of them could look back, Suho kicks him to death. He then begins to kill every one of them brutally, with no mercy. After piercing their bodies, he discovers one blood crystal, which can be sold for profit. He leaves the place to discover the big one, but when his partner arrives there, he sees a lot of goblins dead on the ground, and the scene looks like a massacre. Suho obtains skill points by killing so many goblins that he can now use them to acquire skills. He sees a lot of options but decides to summon the tree spirit. The tree spirit summons Suho remembers it from his other world's experience. He then orders the tree spirit to go look for more goblins. Tree spirits can communicate with him via trees and grass because they're all connected. He then checks that stat screen and discovers he has leveled up. His achievement count is 345. He then sees an option to search and track, which will help in hunting. He uses his remaining point to buy both of these skills because he knows their importance. He begins to use the search skill to mark the entire place, and then, with the help of the tracking skill, he finally discovers something that is not a goblin. It's something powerful and stronger, a perfect target for him. Without wasting any time, he arrives at the place for the battle, but he sees that his partner is already battling with the monster but struggling to gain the upper hand. Suho shouts at him because he told him to stay at the door's place and not hunt alone. He tells Suho that he isn't hunting but getting hunted. The monster ignores their conversation and all its focus is on slaughter. He tries to stab, but Suho immediately kicks him away. Before it could stand up again, Suho kicks it so hard that the entire body gets covered in blood. Suho gives it no chance to run away or to counterattack. He strikes at it one after another and finally takes his life. Suho instantly levels up and acquires 120 points, while his partner is still in shock, because maybe he has never seen such a ruthless hunter. Suho then asks him if the door will open now or not because he finds no problem in hunting someone more powerful, but this kill was already enough to open the door. Their job is done, so they both return via the portal, and everyone watches them in surprise. One guard remembers that Captain Kang asked him to remind him if that farrier returns. Hyunam then excuses himself because he wants to meet with his team. He also thanks Suho one last time for his incredible help. After changing clothes, when Suho arrives outside, he meets Captain Kang, who is standing there excited to meet him. The captain then asks him if he's Park Suho and introduces himself as Captain Kang Min-hyuk, the captain of the 27th Combat Team of the Shilla Guild. He asks Suho for a few minutes, and they both go to a bar to talk in private. Kang then offers him the chance to join the Shilla Guild and promises to provide a good working environment for him. Suho refuses in a second, which makes Kang angry, but he hides it. He then asks Suho if he's associated with another guild, and if that's the case, then they will submit an official offer to his guild. Suho again says he doesn't have a guild and is just working alone. Kang then tries to convince him by mentioning Shilla Guild is ranked 4th and is one of the strongest in the world. He tries to tell Suho how joining the guild can help in many ways, but Suho again refuses the offer because he can't stand working under someone. He knows he's the best, and the best should be the king, not a subordinate. Kang doesn't like his attitude, but he knows there's no other way he could convince him right now. Suho returned home, but Junho and his son weren't there. He thinks they might be spending some father-son time together, which is good for them. He then goes to a rooftop and lays down to rest. Granny then taunts him to stop being lazy because he's young and capable of working. Suho then begins to help the granny. She then asks him once again if he's actually the older brother of Junho because she believes he's aging backwards. Suho jokingly replies that he didn't age backward but reversed it. Granny doesn't understand it, but she believes it because this world has become stranger in the last decade. She then tells him to look after himself because now he has a family to love and care for, and losing a family member is the worst experience in the world. Suho assures her that he can't be killed, but she warns him that the ones who say such things are the ones who die first. Junho and Gunwoo return, and they ask Granny where Suho is. She tells them he's upstairs and waiting for them. Suho then gives Junho an envelope, and when he asks what's in it, Suho tells him it's $50,000 so he can pay all of his debt now. Initially, Suho gets shocked and refuses to take the money because he fears he won't be able to return that amount. He starts to cry because he never thought this day would come. But Suho asks him to stop crying and go. Junho thanks God for such a life-saving favor and leaves to pay off all of his debt. While Gunwoo plays with the dog, Suho checks his screen and sees a message that says that the target is following. Suho doesn't understand what all this is about. Gunwoo then asks him what they will name the dog, and Suho lets him decide. Gunwoo names the dog Biku, and Suho agrees. He also sees Biku's stat screen, which shows he's on level 1. Suho then starts to play with both of them, and just like that, time passes. During the evening, Junho's truck returns, so they both go downstairs to meet him, but to their surprise, they see Junho covered in blood struggling to walk, and suddenly he falls to the ground. Gunwoo tries to wake him up, and Suho begins to wonder what happened to his brother. After it, we see a mob in an office. They were all discussing the betting odds for the SBF Championship tournament when suddenly they hear a big noise outside. The door opens and one of the henchmen tells them they are in trouble, and suddenly he gets snatched behind. Someone is beating up all the mobs, and they start to wonder who it is when they see two eyes in the darkness filled with rage. Those eyes were of Suho, who then lifted a bench with just one hand and threw it at the mobs. He causes a lot of destruction here, and everyone suffers a lot of damage. He then slowly moves ahead towards the boss, who still doesn't know what's happening. Suho then asks him if he's Kim Jong-soo. He replies with yes, that he's Kim. Suho then tells him that he's here to settle a debt. Kim warns him that he shouldn't attack them if he's an Awakener because the government won't like it. Suho doesn't care about his warning and slaps him so hard that his teeth fall out. He continues to beat him up and tells him he shouldn't have crossed the line by beating his brother up. They all then ask forgiveness from Suho and promise to never harass Junho. Suho then leaves the place without wasting any time. But the boss is still angry for this. He tells his subordinates that he has connections with powerful people and he will definitely take revenge. On the other hand, Captain Kang arrives at the guild headquarters and shows his boss, Mr. Park Suho, his profile. He tells them that he's the best one they could get, but when they both try to look more into his profile, a message pops up saying access is denied. Park finds it shocking and interesting at the same time, so they both hack into the system to check his profile. They get impressed after looking at his stats and can't believe he's just a rookie. Kang then says they should do everything to get this guy, but his boss believes he's actually not a mercenary. They check and find he's been missing for 10 years, which makes them believe he could be a government secret agent. Kang still tries to convince Park, but he refuses, saying it's a waste of time to pursue something they can't attain. Kang then asks for just a weekly report on him, but again, it's rejected. Suho arrives at the hospital to meet his brother. Junho then reminds him that the mercenary exam is tomorrow. Suho tells him that he knows that and is fully prepared. But the idea of working under someone is still not good for him because he used to be the king of the jungle. Junho then tells him that he could search for some high-rank guilds for him. But Suho refuses because he's going to form his own guild. We then see Suung again at the Awakener Bureau headquarters. Her boss then scolds her because of 2 breakouts in her area. She tells him that she's trying her best. He then shows her a letter and she gets angry because it's another job letter and she has to go to an exam. Her boss warns her not to reject too many applicants, like always. At the examination center, a lot of applicants are ready to take the exam. We also see a guy live streaming the entire event when Suho crashes his live stream. Then the major, Kim Young-soo, introduces himself. He tells everyone that they will be assigned to one of 21 supervisors. Everyone starts to wish for a good supervisor. Major says that the assignment will be completely random via lottery. The process starts and everyone begins to get their supervisors. The steaming guys, Han Dong-soo and Suho, get the same supervisor, number 15. Surprisingly, the number 15 is Suwon and Suho identifies her. Everyone begins to formulate strategies and Suho notices that Dong-soo is sad. He asks him why he's sad now because just a whole time ago he was very happy. He tells Suho that they are screwed now because that blonde trainer is a witch. She fails everyone because of her own mood and is very rough. Suho tells him that he's just making excuses, which enrages him. Dong-soo then asks him to show some respect to his elders. Suho then tells him to settle things like a man and not be a crybaby. Dong-soo gets angry because he believes he's stronger, so he challenges Suho to a fight. When Suwon arrives, she discovers that no one is there and begins to wonder what's happening. On the other side, Suho and Dong-soo are in a cage to fight. Dong-soo reminds him of what he has done because he believes he's going to beat him to death. He tells Suho that he's a rising YouTube boxer and Suho doesn't know what that is. Everyone believes Suho is an idiot, so they start to cheer Dong-soo. Dong-soo is excited because he believes it will be an easy fight for him. He jokes that he's not going to pay the medical bills. Suho is also ready for the fight because fighting has become an addiction for him. Dong-soo then shows his fitness and agility and launches an attack on Suho, but before anything could have happened, Soo-young arrives there and stops the fight. She orders everyone to go back, otherwise she will immediately fail them. Everyone rushes back except Dong-soo and Suho. She then asks them if they want to fail after doing such a thing. Dong-soo starts to explain that it's not actually his fault, but Soo-young stops him. She tells him that there's no need for explanations because one of them has to take the blame. She then asks both to continue their fight and the loser will be eliminated. And that's how the first part of this manhwa ends. Well guys, if you like this video and you want a second part, comment below with the word planet. Also subscribe to the channel, hit the bell and like the video. But most important, leave a comment. Until the next video.